Recording.
Is it? Okay, cool.
Yep.
Kyle must have done it. Okay. Anyways, okay. So, okay. We went over terminology, formatting and organizing in Excel, cut, copy, paste, and paste special. And paste special is like when you do a function in addition to just pasting or limit the type of paste. Flash fill, sorting and filtering, basic formulas and formula errors. And then the specific formulas we covered were if error, count ifs, sum ifs. And then we did a little bit with basic pivot tables. So again, we're just going to go over very briefly. I want to make sure that we're on the same page vocabulary wise. The parts of a spreadsheet. It's made up of rows and columns, where a single row and column intersect as a cell. Columns are lettered and rows are numbered. And cell notation is how we identify a cell by its column and row. So it would be like A1. And then a range is a group of cells, and it's referred to by a notation of the upper leftmost and bottom rightmost cell separated by a colon. So that would be like A1 to D4. And this example here is highlighted, and that's important for you to know a range. Again, just a recap of the basics. Formulas use logic to return a result. All formulas begin with an equal sign. There are 4 elements that can be in a formula: functions, operators, references, and constants, and they can be used in combination. Functions are basically predefined formulas. So like when we were talking about like sum or if, those are both predefined formulas. They have a series of steps that they'll execute in order to complete your calculation. Operators are what you think of when you think of like math. So plus, minus, multiply, divide, less than, greater than, equals, and then the 2 carets with the wide parts facing each other. So less than, greater than together means not equals in Excel. References are when we use cell notation to identify a cell or a range. So again, A1 to D4. And then you can reference cells on another tab of the same workbook by including the tab's name. Constants are hard numbers, something that's not going to change. So like 10 would be a hard number. True or false or text in quotes will be used as a constant. So again, I'm just recapping this so that you guys we're all on the same page. This is what we learned before. We learned sum, and you can see that there's a leading equal sign. Sum is a function, B2 is a reference, and 2 is a constant. So in this particular example, if you were to look at in this particular example, sum would add together the 2 values inside the parentheses. If error is another one that we learned, and it was the function is if there is an error, essentially if error. And then the first variable is a formula with a desired result. And then after the comma, there's an alternate result. So like if there is an error, for instance, if I divide by 0, I'll get an error. And if not, and if that appears, it'll tell me whatever I put in the second part of the formula. I'm going to try to show you guys the sheet. So that's, you can see here without if error, this formula where I divide one value by another is going to throw an error. And if I add the if error formula, which you can see up here, it will show you, I can't see. Okay. If I go to formulas, I can show you guys. So I just turned it on so we could see all the formulas and all the cells. And you can see the if error formula here is preventing this from throwing the error. So we can see now it just says no total, which is what I had specified. And then we also learned if, which is a slightly more complex formula. So it has 3 elements. It's the function in the front, if, we know. And then there's a logical expression. So it's something that uses an equal sign, a not equal sign, or there are some phrases that can be used in there, but basically it returns a yes, no, or true, false answer. So if D2 equals coffee, then the first value after the comma will be what it would return if it was true, and the second would be if it's false. So if B2 or if D2 equals coffee, then return B2 plus 2. If D2 does not equal coffee, then return no tip. We also learned count ifs and sum ifs. Count ifs counts values in a range if they meet the criteria you designate. Sum ifs adds together values in the same or other range that meet the criteria you designate. So again, just everything labeled. And it's very similar to the if formula. We have the function in the front, and then the first range that will be counted and contain the first criteria is listed. Then the first criteria, and I introduced a new thing here to you guys. You can say in count ifs or sum ifs, you can choose like an operator. So less than, greater than, not equal, equal, less than or equal to. And if you put it in quotes and the ampersand, you can add a number there, and then it'll count any value that is greater than 6 in this particular example. So, and then following that, there'll be the second range that will be counted if you had another range that needed to be a certain value in order for the item to be counted, and then that criteria. So I'm going to show you guys my spreadsheet again. So we want to count if this is over $6 here, and if it equals coffee. Like, I don't want to know about this grocery store. I just want to know when I spent too much on coffee. So there were 2 times I spent too much on coffee. And then a similar thing here for sum ifs. I want to know how much I spent on coffee that was too much. So that would be what we did with that last time. All right, now that we've recapped, I'm going to go over some more advanced formulas. We now know the same, we're all on the same page vocabulary-wise. We've got a refresher on what parts of a formula are. So first of all, I do not have Fact Bear Week information for you this time, although it did just happen, and there was a winner chosen, and I don't know who it was. But I'm going to, this time we're going to talk about a budget. So I made you guys like a sample list of transactions and a sample budget. And then we're going to use some more complex formulas and data analysis on this. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of data to evaluate for the fat bears. So the first advanced formula we're going to look at is VLOOKUP. We're going to look at 2 lookup formulas and then an alternate choice. And those are going to be the main advanced formulas that we look at because they are commonly used in data analysis and also are skills that employers often look for. So it's a good thing for you to know. There are a lot of ways it can be used. So VLOOKUP is V for vertical. So it finds a value in one vertical column and returns another value in the same row of a different column. So if I'm looking for 150, it'll then return, if I say I want it to return from that column, the description, it'll return Geico. VLOOKUP only works from left to right. So I couldn't look up Geico and get 150 because it has to be in the left column, has to be the reference column. And it finds the first value that meets your criteria. So it, and then it'll return the first value as well. So if I was trying to find the Verizon charge here, I wouldn't be able to do that with VLOOKUP. So the parts of VLOOKUP are the function, obviously, in the beginning, and then the lookup value, the value you want to match is what the lookup value is. So it's like, in this case, I'm put 150, but I could also put in quotes, I could put a text value, or I could put a reference there, or I could even put another formula, and we're going to talk about that later. Then you choose a table array. So that's where you want to look for the value you want to match. So an array is another name for a range. And your data has to be arranged in a way that each of the columns are related to each other for you to do this formula. So I'm going to choose in my table, I'm going to look in columns and rows C2 to F100. And then the column index number is the column from where you want the data returned. So if I typed 3, that would give me the 3rd column in my range. And also, oh, I skipped, but when you look up when you're looking at the value, it has to be the first column in the range has to be the column that the value you're looking for is in. So it couldn't be that I like specify B2 to F100 and then try to look for 150 because that's not going to be in column B. That's all dates. So I have to start on C2. And then from there, the column index number is just starting with your first column as 1. And then payment method would be 2, description would be 3. And then the range lookup is just a variable that you choose true, false for. True is going to return an approximate match. And so it'll find like the closest thing to it. There isn't like a margin of error or anything. It's not like the closest thing within X number of characters. It's like it'll find the closest thing to it. And then false will only return an exact match. Most often, false is what you want to choose. And if you don't specify anything, it'll use true, which can be deceptive. So make sure to include the false in that. Oop. And then I'm going to show you guys my screen to look at. Oops, an expensive tab. So here are my examples of VLOOKUP. So I can ask the question, what was that $150 draw from my bank account? I want to know what it was. So I would type in the formula that we saw on the screen, and I would get the answer Geico there. I could also, if I change the column reference number to 4, I would then be able to return the next column as well. So that would then tell me that it was an auto insurance payment. So then there's HLOOKUP. HLOOKUP is for horizontal. I'm going to be honest, guys, I do not use this. This is like a really hard, I had trouble thinking of an example of why you would use this, but it works essentially the same way as VLOOKUP, except for it's horizontal. So it finds a value in one horizontal row and returns another value in the same column of a different row. The only way I could think of this that would work is pretty much a calendar. It's more likely that you would end up using it if you have data that is not well arranged, which may be a reason you want to be analyzing it to begin with. So it'll find, again, the first value that meets your criteria. So if I had April twice in this, it would return the first April that I'm trying to match. Again, lookup value is the value you want to match. So in this case, I have like the abbreviation April for April there. The table array, which again, array is a range, and it's where you to look for the value you want to match. And again, the first row of HLOOKUP has to be the row where you're looking for the value. The row index number is going to be the column, ooh, there's a big typo there, the column from which the formula will return a value. So, or I'm sorry, the row from which, that's what the typo is, the row from which the formula will return a value. So if I wanted row 2 in this case, I want to know what the change to my savings balance was, I would choose that. And then this also has the range lookup thing. So you want to make sure that you're choosing false in like 99% of cases. And we'll look at an example of that too. But as I said, if this is not like a common thing to use, it's on this one. Oh, and I needed to update these. But how much was I over budget in April? How much did I put in my savings? That's the questions that I'm asking. And I think maybe the ranges were updated. Is that why I did those? But yeah, so in April, I was over budget $5.40, and I was able to still put in $369.60. So, like I said, the only time I can think of you to arrange data in that way is basically with a calendar. So, the next really important thing that I want to talk about, and that I'm more excited about, honestly, than about V or H lookup, is nesting formulas. You can have formulas within other formulas. So it's a powerful option when a value in a formula is an unknown variable. So instead of like having to calculate something first and then put that value somewhere and then reference it, or like know that value and type it in, I can actually have the formula inside it. So we actually already did this. If error almost always contains another formula. Sometimes it'll contain a reference, but almost always it's going to be another formula. If I were to type equals B8 divided by B10, that's a formula in and of itself. That will return a result. It starts with an equal sign. It has references and an operator in it. Formulas don't have to have a function in them. So if error contains starts with a function, and then nested inside that is a formula inside another formula. And the power of this is I don't have to separately calculate B8 divided by B10 and then like reference it in there or otherwise get it into the formula. So you can see where this would be really powerful in other circumstances. So we're going to do, this is probably my favorite advanced formula. I use it all the time. As I said, VLOOKUP is left to right only, and HLOOKUP is top to bottom only, which is really frustrating. It really limits your ability to search a table if your ID row or ID column or row is not necessarily the first row or column in it. So you might want to reference data on the either side of where your ID is. Index and match combined together allows you to find data anywhere in a table. So these are two formulas. Both of them by themselves are pretty simple. And if you isolate them, it's not actually all that complicated. So index returns a value within an identified range by selecting a row and column, which I promise is less complicated than it sounds, and we'll look at it in a second. Match returns an ordinal number corresponding to a row or a column. Again, not as complicated as it sounds, we'll look at it. So when you combine them, you can then basically find whatever cell you want because you're going to specify the intersection of a column and a row. So for instance, I could find Geico on this with this formula and return the amount that I paid to them. So first we're going to talk about match because it's inside that index column, and I think that'll make it easier. So this is a more simple formula. Match has a lookup value, one column lookup array. It either has to be one column or one row, and then a match type. So the lookup value, again, is like, it could be a number, it could be text in quotes, it could be a reference. So like, if you wanted to know if like you were looking for the next thing that had gas, I could use like cell F5 as my lookup value. And then the lookup array is where to look for the value you want. And again, it must be either one column or one row. So I'm looking in column F for renter's insurance. And then the match type is similar to the true false thing. And also I want to note, you do not have to remember these things, that like Excel will prompt you for that. And I will show you in 1 second that. But basically 1 is less than the value. So if you're talking about numeric values, that's helpful, but it's not for like when you're searching for text as your lookup value, it's not. 0 is exact. Again, that's going to be your most common case. And -1 is greater than. So like if, which is not the most logical thing to me, but whatever. So for instance, if you wanted to see like, you're trying to find something, you're like, I know it was around $150. If you want to look for something less than 150, like it was like 149.99, that would return that result. The result is a number corresponding to the match's position. So it is an ordinal number within the range. So I did not include row 1 in my range. So when I put this formula in, it's going to return 24 because 24 is the 24th value in the range that I selected. So the range is just column F. And then I started in number 2. So car loan would be 1, auto insurance would be 2, so on and so on. It matches up actually with the transaction numbers in column A. So the 24th value in the range is renter's insurance. So it's going to return that number, which is not by itself necessarily particularly useful. So index then is also very simple formula. You're literally just telling it like within this array, I'm giving you this address and I want you to return it. So basically when you like say that something is in cell A1, it's as if your entire array is your spreadsheet. That's specifying first row and first column. So we're doing the same thing, but with just numbers inside any array that we specify. So I just want to know, I would just want to get the value in column B. I want to know the date that I paid my renter's insurance. So I'm going to go, so I'm going to search in that array, and I'm going to specify the row number that I just got from the other formula. So I'm just going to say it's 24. And then the third option is column number. You don't have to include this if you were searching if you were doing like an HLOOKUP, basically with this, you would need to specify that. Or if you selected a larger range for your array, so if I did like A through D, I could choose 2 as my column number to return that value, which is also a strength over VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, that you can specify both of them at the same time. You can specify row and column. So you're just like finding the address of this column. So I'm looking in column B and like row 24 of that array. So you can see where like I would want to not have to get that value for the row number first. So if I combine them together, this is really powerful, and I can do basically a VLOOKUP, but anywhere on the table. Match can replace the row number as a variable, essentially. So when you put in the entire match formula that we had found before, that will return the column number that we wanted, and you can leave it there. And I also can leave off the column because it's an optional value in the index formula. The one thing to note is that if you are using match to replace a row number in index, then you have to make sure that the rows line up. So if I like put match the match formula with F2 to F44, but if I did the index formula with B1 to B44, it's going to return the 24th value in the column I specified, which is going to be wrong because my array for the match started in 2. So you just have to make sure that like they're the same size and they have the same number of rows for it to work. So that was a lot, I know. And I'm going to talk about data validation briefly. I'm going to do questions at the end just to make sure we have time for everything. Please let me know when you have questions at the end. So just very briefly, data validation allows you to predefine or restrict cell contents. You can restrict the value type, so you can make it so that only a date could be typed into a cell, or only a time, or only a 5-letter word could be typed in. So that's useful if you have like an ID number or something that needs to be a certain length. So like for instance, people's FEMA IDs are a specific length, or someone's phone number. If you select the option, I'm going to show you guys this like actually in Excel in a second. If you choose list as the option, it allows you to restrict a cell's value to a specific predetermined set. So you can say only these 5 values are allowed in this cell. It then allows for a drop-down option, so you can click on it and choose which of those 5 values from the drop-down. Unfortunately, you can't select more than one thing in this, in a drop-down. It's not like a regular drop-down menu. Cells can't have multiple values. But it is super useful. So I'm going to show you a use case for that is in this. So if we look at the expenses tab, in category, I've added data validation here, and I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to click on data, and under data tools, if you click data validation, and then data validation again. I wish I could make this bigger. I don't know if it won't. So I can then choose from the settings. I can choose allow. It's going to default to any value. Every cell has like any value as its default. I could choose date, time, text length, and you can like specify with a formula as well. I don't know what you would do there though. But if I choose list, it then lets me choose a list. So what's really cool about this is I don't have to make a list separately if I'm trying to correspond this to the budget that I've made. If I click this button here, it'll open up and it'll let me choose what area I'm referencing on the sheet. So I can just choose the category names on my budget. That way I'm making sure that like I only am using the category names that are in my budget, and I can therefore evaluate against them. It's not like I accidentally type grocery instead of groceries, or I put in electricity instead of utilities, and then it doesn't add up in my budget, and I think that I have money left to spend and I don't. This way I'm able to like restrict what I'm entering and make sure that's counted. And then again, it'll I wanted to get out of this, and I like did escape from the wrong thing. Okay, so yeah, and then when I click on this, I'll be able to choose from this drop-down list of values. And I think I applied it to everything in this column. But you can select where it applies. So I could have done the same thing and probably should have in payment method. And there's like good reasons you'd want to do that. Obviously, like we have the chart that's counting up the budget on the other thing, but we're going to use it in graphs as well. So let me do this. That's it for data validation. That's mostly like the way that you would use that. So now we're going to talk about charts and graphs. The types of charts and graphs in Excel are column or bar charts, which I don't know about you guys, but when I learned about like graphs in school, it was all bar charts. But basically in Excel, a column chart is vertical bars and a bar chart is horizontal bars. They can be clustered, which is like two bars next to each other. They can be stacked, which would show values within one bar, and they can be 100% stacked, which uses percent instead of value to meet the maximum area of the bar. There's line graphs, there's area graphs, there's pie charts, there's combo charts, and there are a bunch of others. There's also spark lines, which are not listed in the charts part of the program, and I'm going to show you guys where those are, and we're going to talk about them a little bit. But first, I want to look at the types of graphs. So we're going to look at the charts and graphs tab here. So like I made a really simple graph here. This is just of my budget line items, and I'm going to be honest, I actually trimmed out part of it, and we'll talk about why. So so this is just like, this is a clustered column chart. The columns, because they're vertical, they're clustered because I have two values next to each other, expected amount, actual amount. Then I have a line graph down here. I have a pie chart up here. We're going to go over each of these. I have variance from budget, and this is an area chart. And then I have a stacked bar chart down here. So I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about how you make these. So essentially, first of all, before you create any chart or graph in Excel, data has to be arranged in a table. So like same thing that we talked about with pivot tables, where it's like everything should be in rows and columns that are labeled. And a series refers to one set of data. So like a column, like the date column, the dates are a series. So what you're going to do is you're going to select, and I'm going to do this for you guys, but I'm going to tell you about it first. Select at least one series of data to be included in your chart, and then you're going to go to Insert on the menu bar, and you're going to select a chart option. And then you can add additional data by choosing Select Data. So we're going to go over all of this, and I'm just going to make a bunch of graphs with you guys. So we're going to basically replicate this tab that already exists, and we're going to go through these. I'm going to try to go through them pretty quickly. And we'll do, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the other two special types of graphs that I want to show you guys. So I'm just going to show you I'm going to show you, a combo chart, which I didn't talk about, which is a combination of two things. I'm going to show you a column chart, and then I'm going to make it into a combo chart, and then I'm going to show you guys an area graph. So the first thing I'm going to do is make one similar to this. So I'm going to go to the budget tab, and I just want to see how I spent my money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight actually these two columns. I'm going to highlight expected amount and actual. Expected amount and actual amount. I'm actually doing expected amount and adjusted amount. That would be better. So basically, also the adjusted amount is just like, the idea would be that I can't spend more money than I have, so I subtracted the overage from savings. So that's all that's showing you. So it should always equal the amount that I budgeted. So I'm going to go up to the top on the menu bar, and I'm going to choose Insert, and then there's going to be an area for charts. So you can choose one of these. Like Excel, based on what you chose, will recommend charts. Sometimes they're good, most of the time they're not, honestly. It tends to not really know what you're doing. And then there's like column or bar charts here. There's hierarchy charts, like all kinds of stuff. But I think it's easiest if you click the little thing here, and I'll show you all the charts. And I'll show you like previews of everything. So I don't know why I would want a scatter chart. This is pretty much what I want. Yeah, so some of these are good, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go to the all charts tab, and then you can select a chart from here. So it'll show it to you a couple different ways. It'll show you like with the horizontal and vertical axis flipped for most of them. So like a line chart, this is very strange. Pie chart, which like we're gonna talk about this later, but this is a horrible pie chart, so I wouldn't use that. Bar chart again is column, but going sideways instead. An area chart, we'll talk about in a minute. And then a scatter plot. There are also like crazy things like there's a tree map that's really cool. There's a sunburst. But yeah, we're going to use a column chart. We're going to do clustered column. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to choose OK. So it's going to automatically just drop it there, but I can cut the chart by hitting Control X, or you could go up to File. I think there's a way to do it from this right here. You could do cut. But I'm going to go into chart, or I'm going to go into like my new sheet, and I'm going to paste it. So we're like halfway there. I have all the values as bars, but it doesn't look great. I've made a chart, but it's not totally legible, and it maybe isn't showing you everything that I want it to. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define this axis. So if I right click, I can go to select data, and that'll allow me, this very confusing dialog will allow me to select what I want to label the axis. The important part for you to know on this is that on the left side, the series are the numbers, and on the right side is their labels. That's all you really need to know. I would just look in the parentheses, basically. But I want there to be labels that from column B on my chart. So I'm going to hit edit on the labels section. I'm going to navigate back to budget, and I'll highlight the corresponding cells. And then I'll hit OK, and you can see it updated. Much better, much more legible. If I do this, it's going to scale automatically. I can also just change the chart title here. So like October budget. So that's like step one of this. Now I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and talk to you guys about that. Ooh, let me go to this first. So formatting can be accessed from the menu bar when a chart or graph is selected. So the design and format toolbars will become available when you click on a chart or a graph. Design has a preset color scheme and style menu, and then format has standard Excel object options like adding a shadow or text effects and that kind of stuff. It's kind of weird with graphs. There are a lot more detailed options though if you right click on any part of the chart and choose whatever format option is available. So we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna make all of our graphs, and then I'm gonna go back to this like high impact formatting changes, and we're gonna see what like we can do by just changing some small things on this. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to this. So like I said, I could right click and then choose format plot area, and I could start making changes to the format. But we're gonna make a couple other graphs first, and then we're gonna do a bunch of formatting. So I'm gonna go back to the budget column, I think is the one, budget sheet I wanted to do. Variance from budget. Yeah, it's on this column. It's over here. It's this table. So I'm going to put the budget amount and the month spend. I'm going to highlight both of those. I'm going to go to insert again, and I'm going to open the chart dialog. It's going to recommend some stuff. This is like a really useless graph. So again, I'm going to go to all charts, and this would actually be pretty useful. It would show me by month like how close I was to budget, but I want to actually use an area chart because I think that's a cool way of showing this. So basically what an area chart is like a line graph with the area below it colored in. And if there was a greater variance from my budget, this would be more impactful, but it is cool to look at how this could be used in a bunch of different ways. So like if you can plot like the area as like you could do revenue and expense, and you can see how those two values interact. So I'm going to choose this. And again, same thing, it's going to end up pasting right in the middle of my page. So I can go to the home tab and then hit cut, or I can hit Control X. And then I'm going to paste it. right here. And again, I'm going to do the same thing to define the labels. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to select data. I'll get this confusing window. I'm happy with the series that are chosen. I'm just not happy with how they're labeled. So I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go back to that budget tab and I'm going to choose the months. And I'll click OK. So now it's so much easier to read. And I'm just going to say like, I'm going to call this like budget perform or budget variance. So we're going to start with these two columns, and then I'm going to go back to the other two special types of graphs I was going to tell you guys about. So there are two types of charts that are super useful that are not as obvious as the other ones. It's not just like a regular bar chart from the data that you have in a table. So first, spark lines are essentially a chart or graph in a single cell. So if you're looking at the budget spreadsheet, those are around the table on the right, and I'm going to show you. There are three types. There's line, column, and win-loss. And they're used to visually track performance of individual rows or columns on a spreadsheet. So I'll show you that in just a second. And then the other one is a pivot chart. So we looked at that horrible, I'm going to show you that pie chart again, but we looked at the horrible pie chart. It's not useful. I want to be able to like aggregate all the data to show like groups of data. So there's a thing called a pivot chart that like makes a pivot table with the chart at the same time. So it allows you to do the same thing that a pivot table does, but visually. It makes it so you can visually see patterns and conclusions can be made more easily from the data. So let's go back to that Excel sheet. First, let's look at the spark lines. So over here in like I through R, close that. These are spark lines, these are spark lines, and these are spark lines. So the way that you access these is actually the same. So if I choose some data, so for instance, this was, I think this is this. Yeah, it's just, I just picked like a random thing. So like the change to savings amount, if I highlight this, or like I highlight all of it, actually, that's how I made that. Go to insert, and then I can choose line for spark line. So it'll have me put it somewhere. So I'm just gonna pick somewhere to show you guys. So it'll make these lines that are representative of the data in each row. So these are like the same because they're related. You can see the budget amount one is a straight line because it's the same value every time, and month spend is basically inverted from the savings amount. This will be used mostly like when you're tracking like a stock, let's say. So you could use that. It's also great for tracking, like, let's say if you wanted to like see how many times something was like late or that kind of thing when someone's turning something in. You could make this like tiny little line graph to like visually see it. The ones down here, this is like a really limited use of this, but I just wanted to show you as like another visual trick you can do with spark lines. So this and these are win-loss spark lines. And I think they're probably the more useful of the two if you're not doing like stocks. So I would do for this, I would, this is like positive and negative numbers. So I'm going to go to change to savings balance. I'm going to highlight it. And you can see like there are some times where I didn't put very much money in. There are times where I had to take money out. So I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to go to the spark lines part. I'm going to go to win loss. And then I'm going to, again, choose like a range location. Because it's a row, I'm going to do the same number of rows. And I'll hit OK. And it'll create these like win loss things. So if there's one value in that column in the line that I highlighted, it's going to give me just one bar. It's like essentially a tiny bar graph. So I think that's nice for like visually looking at like, oh, March was bad, June was bad. I can just like look at it and see the red versus blue. Really helpful. On these, I highlighted, I wanted to look at it like as a trend. So if I highlight these first two rows, I go ahead and I go to insert and I go to spark lines and click win loss. I've got more data. So I've got like, I want to know everything that's in this row, what that looks like from like a win loss, like positive, negative perspective. So if I go to location, I can click here. and it'll create that I did before. So really cool little visualization thing, like quick autograph kind of things that you can just like look at trends. Now we're gonna make a pivot chart. So I need to hide this again. It keeps popping back up. Okay, so then the other one we're gonna do is we're gonna make a pivot chart. So if I go back and I look at the expenses, I want to know like how much I used cash or stuff automatically drafted from my bank account. So this payment method area, or I could do it with category where we have the data validation, but that looked really bad when I did that. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way that we could make a chart from this that is more useful. If I were to go in right now and I just like went like this and I tried to make a pie chart, it's gonna look horrible. It like doesn't even know what to do with it. There's too many values. They don't have like a numeric value associated with it. It doesn't know what's going on. It's not gonna just like add everything up for me. That's why I need to use the pivot chart. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna delete this. So I'm gonna go, I really wish it stopped doing this. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click on, I'm just gonna highlight the whole table, including the labels because it's a pivot table and you have to have labels. So I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to go to pivot chart. I'm going to click pivot chart. So I selected my table or range already, and then I have to put it somewhere. So I could put it on a new worksheet. I could put it right here, but I'm going to choose existing location. I'm going to put it on that tab that we've been working in. All right. So it created two objects for me to fill out. First is pivot table. So let's fill out the pivot table. I want to know, again, so like the things that you need to fill out for sure in every pivot table are going to be rows and values. So I want the value, like, oops, not category. I don't want to do that. The rows don't do category because it's going to be a horrible pivot table. I'm going to do payment method. And then for the values, I want to do payment method again. I want to do the count of each of those. I want to know how many of them were there. So like I had 32 transactions with credit card, 2 with cash, and 8 with bank. So now with that, if I right click and go to change chart type, or I could go up to design or up here and do that. And I switch it to a pie chart, I suddenly have something more useful. It's like a lot more useful than what was happening when we looked before. So now that we are there, I want to make sure we have time for the Gantt chart. So I'm going to format one of these for you guys. I'm going to show you what a difference scale can make. And so I had said before that there are some high impact changes you can make in formatting. So one is like changing the axis options. So that means that basically like if you can set like the minimum and maximum bounds. So if my budget's $3,700 a month and I make the y-axis $100,000, it's going to make my budget look tiny. But vice versa too. And then I can format the data series, which is like I can change the color, transparency, border, and effect options for emphasis or meaning. And I can add or format data labels or callouts so that you can see things more easily. And I can add a trend line to a bar chart. So I'm going to go back to that sheet and we're going to format this budget variance. So for some reason, it goes up to 6,000. I think it's because of this month that I paid my February rent late. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click and then I'm going to go to format chart area. It might say if you right click here, it's going to say format data series. Whatever format option is here will get you into the same menu. And then you can choose like what you want to format from the drop down. So what I actually want to format is I want to format the vertical axis. I'm going to show you guys this. So the options that are up here are like fill in line, effects, size and properties, and then axis options, or it'll be options for that specific item. So I'm going to go to axis options. So now I can change the minimum and maximum value. So what if I make the minimum value 2,000? All of a sudden it changes everything. Like it's compressed the scale a lot. The variances look bigger. and it looks really different. But also I still can barely see the budget line. So another thing that I can do is go into this and click on this data series. And then I'm going to go again to series options. Oops, no, I'm going to go to color. So I'm going to make the fill a solid fill, and then I'm going to change the transparency. So if I change the transparency, I can now see the other part of my area chart. So now I can see that this is like my baseline, and when I dip below it, you can see it. When I go above it, it's this brighter color, and it kind of gives me like an idea of like something being over or under. So now I can see that better, and I've compressed it. It like looks really different. And the same kind of thing for this. You could also, on this bar chart, I could go into here and I could, if I wanted it to look a little bit different, change the colors, obviously. I can also go up here to design, and there are like preset themes, and change like the way it looks. Or like add specific labeling. And then to add data labels, I can right click on what I want to add it to, and then click add data labels. And it'll automatically add just like the numeric value that it made from it. But I can also change that to instead be, if I go to format data labels, there we go. I can change it to percentage. So I want to know what percent it is. I can turn off the value. So it's like 76% of my transactions were credit card transactions, and 5% were cash. So that gives me that option as well. All right, I'm going to move on to Gantt charts super quick because I'm running a little bit behind. So what is a Gantt chart? It's a bar chart that visually represents a project's progress. So it was invented in the early 1900s by Henry Gantt. Gantt doesn't like stand for anything, this guy's last name. It shows the predicted start and end dates of individual tasks within a project. Why would you use a Gantt chart? So it was used first in 1912, I think, commercially by the construction industry, and it's often used in the construction industry, and we are a construction company. It dovetails with TPS and just-in-time principles, mostly because it generally uses an early start time approach that requires you to predict the earliest a task can be started. So you're like, when X task ends, I can start Y task. Project management software has simplified factoring in variables like percent complete or like dependencies, like this has to be done before this starts, and makes it easy to update Gantt charts during a project. You can make Gantt charts in Excel, and we are going to make one. I will say Microsoft Projects exists. It is available to you via our licenses, I think. But it makes a more complex, varied Gantt chart. So we're going to look at how to do this. Actually, let me go back to the steps. So these are the steps for creating a Gantt chart. You create a table with the columns for task name, start date, and duration. Those are the only names you need, or the only columns you need. I also have end date on mine, but that was just to calculate the duration. And then I'm going to follow the steps I went over before to create a stacked bar chart of start date only. Then I'm going to right click on the chart and select data, and I'm going to add duration. I'm going to go over all of this. And then I'm going to format my chart to transform it into a Gantt chart. So I'm going to go back to this. So I'm going to highlight just start date. I'm going to go to insert. I'm going to go to all charts. I'm going to go to bar chart. I'm going to click OK. I know this doesn't look like a Gantt chart yet, but I promise it's the same chart as up there. So that's the first step. The second step is going to be, well, I can format it, but I'm just gonna do the steps first that will add the data. So I'll right click, I'll click select data. So now this is like, we've been changing things on the category access labels, and we will in a second. But I'm gonna first add a series. So I'm gonna click add series. I'm gonna add duration. And this was, did I choose the wrong chart type? We'll find out in a second. I did choose the wrong chart type. So I need to choose, I need to choose stacked columns. Oops. Oh my goodness. Stacked bar, sorry. All right. So I need to, let me do that again. I need to add the data, or, oh God, y'all. Okay, I need to select data, and then I'm going to add this series, which I think I did. Yeah, so I added the duration. Oop, I did it in the wrong part. I'm gonna add the name. I'm rushing and I shouldn't be. I'm gonna add the series. And now it's gonna look like this. And this actually is the beginning of our Gantt chart. So I'm going to, this is basically the Gantt chart. It's just like the formatting is different. So I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna add the horizontal axis labels, which is just the task names. Click OK. Then I'm gonna go down here, and formatting is what's gonna make the difference here. So I'm gonna right click and choose format data series. I'm going to, I'm highlighting specifically the start date data series here, so like the blue columns. And I'm going to change the fill to no fill. I'm going to change the border to no border. And then I'm going to go to the axis options for the tasks. Oops, sorry. And I'm going to click, there's a box here that says categories in reverse order. I'm going to click on that. And it's going to make it so that my first one is first. I'm going to go, now I'm going to change this because this is like compressed and weird because it's showing like from 0 to my value. So I'm going to now change the minimum and maximum. So it formats dates as numbers, which is kind of annoying. So if I type in, I want it to start on 10/1. So if I type in a date here and go to this, and you might recall from our last Excel with Excellence, if you click on number format, if I just look at general, it'll tell me what the number I'm looking for is. So 45200 is the number I want there. So we'll go back to this. We'll go 45200. And that's 10/1. And I already guessed 1031 as my end. I'm also going to change my units. My major units are set at 5 right now, but a week is 7. So I'm going to go ahead and type 7. And that will now show me like the beginning of each week. So this is basically a Gantt chart. And then the only difference here is I just like went crazy with formatting just to show you guys that it was possible. You can go in then and you can change like this if you wanted to go in. If you change the gap width, you can reduce it so everything's closer together. So if I go to 0, it'll put everything like right on top of each other, which is what I had done. But yeah, basically that's it. All right, I'm fine to stay on for a little while. Does anybody have any questions? I know I went through that really fast. All right, well, if no one has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you do, but if, I know, I know, it's like a lot of stuff. And also, I am happy to go over anything with you guys again. And I tried to make the spreadsheet more explorable for you guys this time so that you could try to follow along with the slides and with the spreadsheet. So y'all have a great day, and thank you so much for participating. And now I can't find Zoom. Now it won't show me the window.